Your undying attention, please, to the next guest, who will be talking about understanding the black market, and he will be taking an operator's perspective. I'm talking about Mr. Ewout Keuleers, the former General Counsel of Kindred Group and Chair of International Betting Integrity Association. He has 25 years' experience in the gambling industry, in Unibet and Kindred mainly, involved in policy making. He has been behind establishing various trade bodies in the European Union, and the views that he will be expressing today are his own, personal, and not tied to any operator or trade body. And he is speaking in his capacity as an industry expert, an independent industry expert. The floor is yours, Ewout. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Peter Paul, and I hope you all had a good lunch. I know now the oxygen goes from the brain to the belly, but luckily Willem asked me to be, with best intentions, to be a bit provocative as to the debate, as to the challenge that we face, and to dare also the approach. So I will do that, but it's with best intentions. I acknowledge that the questions, especially in terms of consumer protection, RG, are very legitimate, and I welcome and also endorse effect-based discussion on it. But if I look at the debate that we had this morning here, also debate in other member states or other markets, Sweden, Netherlands, Belgium, France, UK, on a macro level, it's very similar questions, and it's a big push on the black market, that the black market is overtaking the legal market, and I think Matthias did an excellent job today also with the presentation. It's all about the same tools that we have to address that, the user experience, product offer, product restrictions, RG tools, the balance between them, and so on and so on. But my real question is, where is this all leading to? And then I'm actually very afraid for the society stakeholders, operators, players, also regulators, that it is actually a dead-end street, yeah? And a bit like a black market paradox, yeah? In society, there's a debate for more restrictions. I live in the middle whether they are right or wrong, but there are more restrictions coming, and it actually pushes more consumption into the black market. And I really think that we should find a way, or ask the question, how can we reverse that? So in my thinking, I have three main questions that I want to share with you. It's like the black market, what are we really talking about? Why blocking doesn't work? And I'm speaking from my own lived experience of being in an operator and managing that in various markets, and also the legal and the litigation around it. And then I think what I think is a bit missing going forward in the debate, not just in Germany, but also across other markets. But to me, the debate feels very much in Germany also that we are ending up in the kind of the right-wrong discussion. And I think we should pedal back a lot as an industry, and also in the context that we are as a digital service provider in a global reality. That's a challenge that the industry has always had, yeah. And again, I'm a dinosaur in the industry, so if you go back to the 2002 UK policy paper, Safe Bet for Success, that was already there. I think if you go back to 2011, I think European Commission state aid decision, which was really about how do you regulate an online market where the better offer is just one click away. I think that's still the question today. What has changed? Maybe with 15 years ago, that of course the industry has evolved, the industry has matured a lot. Then we were speaking about pre-match betting and maybe live dealer as a niche product. Today we talk about a global service industry with a very mature B2C and B2B offering, with innovation that also drives solutions, but also sometimes problems, and always an always-on industry where everybody basically has a casino or multiple casinos in their back pockets. But it's still the fundamental question about what are we regulating, why do we want to regulate, and then comes the question how. And I think we are jumping first and foremost to the question how we want to regulate, then the toolbox that is pretty common across markets. But I think we need to go back to the question about what are we regulating and what's driving that ecosystem, and then the why. And again, I will provoke it a little bit. That question is not something new. You have seen it in other parts of digital transformation of society, where you had like in music, you had from Napster towards iTunes and Spotify. You had with Netflix against Pirate Bay and Popcorn. I assume Popcorn is not that familiar or known in Germany, but Popcorn was basically a torrent website with lots and lots of very good content, but it had the user experience of Netflix. And that became very difficult to compete with. And there's actually an episode on Spotify, how to steal from a pirate, and it's very difficult. But the answer to that is by having an equivalent offer. It doesn't have to be identical, it has to be equivalent. But if I take a bigger step back, is that why are we talking about this in the context of gambling? If this was not called gaming in Germany, but drinking in Germany, would we be talking about the same product restrictions, the same user restrictions? If this would be about the Oktoberfest and the Festwiese, would we ask for a Schufa check before somebody books his trip, his hotel, and his access to the Festwiese? And before you can access the Festwiese, you need to show a medical certificate to demonstrate that you're not a problem drinker. Everybody would find that relatively awkward to funny. But why are we then asking that question in our industry, where there's also informed adult choice, and of course clear there needs to be an obligation and a framework for the operators to work in. But the core question is, how do we best deal with that market reality, with that offer that's there in a globalized market? So when we talk about the black market, everybody talks about it, also in all the sessions today. And I think Jörg started with addressing it from a player perspective, but then somewhere down the line, we all end up again, and I'm looking at Jos as well, about financial numbers. I think the reality is a bit more complex and nuanced. I think you can see it from different perspectives: the player, the operator, the regulator, and a policy point of view. From a player perspective, I think it's pretty straightforward. The player wants to just place the bet, the stake on the game, the product of his choice. He's maybe interested in brand value, goods, loyalty and all that, but he's less sensitive about the legals around it or where that operator or brand is regulated. He just wants to place his bet. From an operator point of view, on the back of re-regulation in Europe over the last 15 years, I think what was there in the initial stages of, let's say, what I call EU.com, I think there's been a clear process market by market where operators made a clear choice to be either in the market or out. So the gray midfield has largely disappeared, I would say. The black market of today are, in my view, operators that made a conscious decision to stay outside the legal scheme, to never apply for a license, and they run their own strategy with their own P&L logic and their own investment logic with a different risk and reward approach. And it's very difficult to catch them because they have the structure in place, corporate-wise, tech-wise, to just keep on going. And that brings me to the role of the regulator, and I think Willem alluded to it in his opening address. Most gaming regulators in Europe are administrative authorities. They are not equipped to deal with black market operators on the other side of the globe. I think it's more a question of tax evasion, follow the money, the case being in combination with criminal law enforcement, which is a different ball game then. But I don't think that administrative authorities, gaming regulators, should over-focus on the gambling, on the black market. I think they should focus on making sure that players have a fair, high-quality offer that meets their demand, and that too, that they ensure that within the legal market there is a level playing field where the operators that are licensed in the markets get a reward for doing the right thing. But it equally means that bad behavior or systematic failure to comply is policed out more efficiently and effectively. If bad behavior is tolerated, and incidents can happen, will always happen, but if bad behavior is tolerated, as we have seen in Belgium, it will lead to a race to the bottom, and you shoot yourself in your foot as an industry. And then I come to the policy point of view. Again, what are we measuring? Yeah, we can talk about black market in function of gross win, which especially from an operator point of view is valid. From a tax point of view, tax yield, it's valid, but it's really from a consumer point of view, and I think Jörg addressed it, rightfully so. I think the starting point should be what the customer wants. New technologies empower him or her to place the bet of his or her choice. That's just the reality. But I also believe that, similar to other industries, there will always be people that shop outside the system. That's the same for alcohol, that's the same for tobacco, that is the same for prescription drugs. So I don't think we need to have the objective to be able to channel all the customers all the time. I don't think that's realistic or possible. So I do believe that the focus of a license scheme should be about channeling the majority of the demand in a license scheme and be focused on that. And to quote here former Dutch regulator and MEP Paul Tang, yeah, in a democratic society, you need to ask yourself the question, yeah, how far do you want to restrict self-determination, informed adult choice to protect all customers, if that's at all possible, yeah? And at what opportunity cost? How far do you want to go? And should policy not be based upon the majority of what the customers want in a reasonable manner? So the question becomes less about how much money we are losing to the black market, but how much players do we fail to retain in a license scheme, and what can we do to retain them, to bring them back, to keep them in, and the case being also what is the opportunity cost. We can't lock them in, yeah, and that I think is the reason why blocking does not work. And again, I'm talking from, let's say, 20 years of experience. With that, Italy first started to do this in February 2006. In Europe, they were then labeled as being the China of Europe. But the answer is very simple, is that if there is a technical restriction, technology will just solve it. The internet, new technology have been designed to be decentralized and work around these restrictions. And again, with the advent of new technology like blockchain, that will just keep on happening. So blocking, it maybe create a headline, maybe some stakeholders will celebrate it, but in reality, it doesn't really change anything from a market reality point of view. There can be a limited effect that new entrants find it difficult to enter as a market entry barrier, but the paradox is there as well, that that same blocking measure as a market entry barrier also protects the operators already in that market, and will continue to use operational processes and technology to stay ahead of any blocking measure. And I think that's just the global market reality. These operators that are in the black market, they will continue to be in the black market as long as the financial incentive to stay in is bigger and higher than the hassle, the pain, and the risk. And again, that comes back to follow the money, tax law, tax evasion, criminal law, and enforcement. And I think, again, Italy is a good example and the test case. Italy tried to ring-fence the market by ISP blocking, but then also gradually started to open up the market. And I think 7 or 8 years later, they had a full product offering. They lowered their tax from turnover to gross win, and so on. So what should we be doing? From my perspective, and again, I think the slide of Matthias, I think, was a good summary. It sounds very logical. So why is it not happening? It seems a bit that there's something missing in the mix. Here, the salt in the margarita, so to say. And is the real problem not, yes, there is a black market, yes, it needs to be solved in the right way, but is the real problem of the industry not who is actually listening to us? Do they really care about what the industry is saying on a political level? And that comes back to, I think, our role in society and the perception that we have against us, despite best efforts, despite achievements that we should celebrate. I think as long as we are seen as being part of the problem and not the solution, nobody will really care about what we do and what the intentions are, especially if you're on a political agenda to get re-elected on an anti-gambling message. And I think that's maybe part of the real problem that we have as an industry. And similar to energy or aviation or pharmaceuticals, I think it's very much okay that we are all businesses, that there is a for-profit goal. I think for-profit also means that we innovate, it drives efficiency, effectiveness. But I think the last years, after the mega consolidation in the industry, more and more financial performance became a topic, and we kind of drifted unintentionally away to our role in society and that, let's say, purpose. So I think going forward, there needs to be more focus. If we want to sustain and survive against this global black market, I think we need to regain the trust in society that we are part of the solution, with more focus on ESG and effective management. Where I also believe there is an important role, if you want to succeed on this, have an equivalent offer, an important role to have more scrutiny on shareholder level and board level, because there the real decisions are made. But often they seem to be very far away from actually regulatory oversight. But the real decisions happen on shareholder level and board level, not on a functional, operational level. So I think that's, for me, what's missing in the context, this role in society and the repositioning of the industry. And I see Peter Paul moving in, so thank you for listening. So I need to wrap it up.
Ewout.